particular, today in particular, that we're meeting across international lines. So I just wanted to just to give you a little bit of background about how I'm approaching this conversation today. I'm wearing two hats. Of course, I'm a friend of Inside Out and supporting Inside Out, doing trainings. But the other hat that I'm wearing today is as the executive director of the Dialogue Institute, which is based at Temple University. And at the Dialogue Institute, we've had decades of programming where we've invited students and scholars from all over the globe to come to Philadelphia to participate in a variety of different programs. One of which is our Institutes on Religious Pluralism in the United States. And there were about 6 or 7 program alumni from the Dialogue Institute that I think will be popping in at some point. The only person I see right now is my friend Mirhat, who is going to be joining us. He's waving right now from Kazakhstan, who is very much interested in the Inside Out Prison Exchange program model of teaching. So I would invite you all, wherever you are, if you could just drop your name in the chat box and just say, hello from whatever country you are. Let's just see the countries that are represented among us today. We have Canada in the house. Canada. Australia. Multiple Canadians. Guadalajara, Mexico. Chicago. Wait, somebody said Chicago, Finland, Netherlands, New Zealand, Denmark,
Australia.
Manchester, UK. Did I catch them all?
Australia.
And Kazakhstan, of course. Great to have everybody here today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play I'm going to go into screen share mode, and we're just going to give you a little bit of a taste and introduction of Inside Out in case it's new to you.
Hey, it's on, you guys.
And if you're part of the world, if you're interested in learning more about it. And we even have Ann Schwartzman from Pennsylvania, United States of America. How exciting is that? So permit me to go into screen share. We're going to play a short video, and then Lori is going to make some comments about, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Here we go. And give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
When I started teaching
Yes.
here at Temple.
Can you hear it?
Can you turn it up a little, the volume?
Okay, let me try to go off this again. Let me make sure.
Make sure you check the audio and then share the screen then.
Yep, I'm going to do that again.
How did I learn about jails and prisons? And really, the way that I learned was by going behind the walls a lot. I've been going in and out of prisons for 30 years. The usual Inside Out semester is a standard semester. So for example, here at Temple, we have 15-week semesters. So we meet once a week at Graterford Prison. It's a very large maximum security prison about an hour outside of Philadelphia. You have about 15 outside students, 15 inside students, and people are sitting around the circle alternately, inside, outside around the circle. What is really key to making Inside Out work is that everybody in that room has an equal voice and really an equal stake in the learning process. The idea that we are coming together as a community and learning together outside the walls of academia, it's a very powerful thing. Here we're in a room together, and we are essentially creating this space of freedom in the context of something that is quite the antithesis. We as a society are only able to continue to incarcerate 2.3 million people because so many of us don't know what's going on. Part of my kind of personal mission is to get as many people inside prisons and jails as possible. That's one of the ways that change is going to happen. Temple has been a really wonderful home for Inside Out, for the gestation of Inside Out, as well as where it's gone and where it continues to go into the future. 95% of people who are in are going to get out and, are going to be our neighbors. Who do you want coming out? Do you want somebody who maybe is just a whole lot angrier from the experience? Or do you want somebody coming out who has had opportunities to maybe do some critical thinking? We have people who are teaching courses that span the social sciences, span the arts and humanities, and we even have law school classes that are happening in the Inside Out model. What we've heard from people around the country over the years is that when Inside Out is offered in a correctional institution, it impacts on that institution. It impacts on the culture of the institution. People get to the end of these classes, inside and outside students, and talk about they'll never see the world the same way again. You know, they feel like this has changed their lives. And it's not that sort of thing that we could have planned for. I mean, I didn't sit down in putting, you know, the first syllabus together and say, okay, I want to develop something that's going to change people's lives. But I started to see this unfold, and you know, all of these people around the country, instructors, inside students, outside students, are all involved in this and are putting their mark on it. And it just, I feel like I'm one of the few people I know who could say there is absolutely nothing in the world I'd rather be doing. It is a gift, a pure gift, to be doing this in the world, I have to say. I love it.
It's always good to watch that video again. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to the person who got this whole thing moving and rolling. Lori, could you talk to us a little bit about the trainings of Inside Out, and maybe specifically even the new opportunity that trainings can be in this kind of Zoom environment that we live in?
Right. So two comments first. One, that woman needs a haircut. Two, that kind of choked me up a little bit. Very interesting. I haven't seen it in a long time, and it just touched my heart. So I'm feeling a little verklempt, or whatever that word is. Anyhow, so just to say where we are now in terms of even the breadth and the depth of where we are. I think something like close to 1,200 people have taken the training from, and I just found this out yesterday, from 49 of 50 states in the United States. Of course, the outlier has to be Hawaii. And I just figure they need a site visit from the director, right? Anyhow, and 12, I think it's 12 other countries. I mean, you know, that's really astonishing when you think about it. We have continued to do trainings. We have done 72 trainings so far. The last 4 or 5 have been virtual. And before that, of course, they were in person. So let me say a word about the virtual trainings, which have turned out to be so much better than any of us could have anticipated. So what we do is, I mean, there's many win-win-wins to this. And here's what I mean by that. So since we're not going into prison, and since it is really important for us to have people who are justice involved very central to the training program, we thought about, well, what are we going to do? And so what we've been able to do is get folks who have been involved in Inside Out, often who have been involved in Inside Out trainings, who now are out from all over the country. And they have been, including Canada, by the way, and they have been involved in being the coaches for the trainings. So the trainings are now 6 days. The virtual training is 6 days, just because we're not doing all that, you know, traveling to prisons. And it's really wonderful. And the people who, the coaches are so dedicated to this. They are so deeply into this. And it's really very special for them because it's an opportunity to stay involved in Inside Out, you know, programming. So, you know, I am thrilled about this this particular Zoom, because I just think that we're going to be able to share some really interesting perspectives from all of these different countries. And so I don't want to take any more time. I'm going to throw it right back to you, Dave, and let's take it away.
Sounds good. So I think I first want to go ahead and introduce the speakers who will be sharing a little bit about their story from their part of the world. I'll introduce them briefly, and then we'll move it right into some questions. So first of all, just wave your hand, say hello whenever I mention your name. It's Alani Rodermond from the Netherlands, and
Hi.
I'm not going to pronounce your university name. If you could say it.
It's Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, so from Amsterdam.
Great, welcome.
You did quite well on the name, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, and also we have Lauren Mays from Vancouver Island University.
And Joanne Falvey.
And Joanne
Vancouver
Falvey as well.
Island.
Anybody else from that institution? Okay, anybody else from Canada?
Yeah, well, we have a number of folks from VIU joining us, Beth McClin as well. And then we have a number of our current Inside Out students joining us too. So
Great.
big BC representation going on here right now.
Right.
Sounds good. All right, also we have a group from the UK, and the main speaker will be Kate O'Brien from Durham University in the UK.
Hi
Hello,
there.
Kate.
Yeah, hi everybody. And we have, I think, Hannah King, who is also from the University of Durham, and some of our alumni students. Kath is here, and Dalton's joining us shortly. Got quite a few from the UK, and Phoenix should be here too. So there's a few of us from the UK. Good to be here.
Terrific. Next up, I wanted to introduce to you Linda Minke from the University of Southern Denmark.
Yes, hello. And so sad I couldn't get in touch with some of my former students, but I still have some relation with several of them. But it was too small time. I couldn't, yeah.
All right. Welcome. And next we have Marietta Martinovic from Australia, RMIT University.
And Tarbi Avad, she's there as well.
Terrific. Hello. And last up, we have Danielle Strickland from ITESO University in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Hola.
Hola. Bienvenidos. All right, at this point, we're going to have a fairly informal conversation, and I'm going to open it up with a very basic question. Feel free, pop in as you wish. How did you get connected to Inside Out? What motivated you to do so? And how did you get started teaching in your own country? Just jump in.
Well, I'll jump in then, because I think the way I found my way to Inside Out might have been a little bit different than some folks, but I'm hopefully not the only one who found their way here. And that was that I was a student in Inside Out. So I took my first Inside Out class in my second semester of university at Temple University. And so at the time I had MK Harris, and it was about criminal justice reform strategies. And I went in as a psychology major and thought, holy crap, there's a lot to change about this system. And so I started majoring in criminal justice as well, and actually snuck my way into a second class, I believe my last year of university, taught by Jerry Stoller, who I see here as well. So it's really nice to see you here, Dr. Stoller. And so, yeah, I started off as a student, ended up doing my graduate work at Temple as well, and always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to get trained to teach Inside Out. Realized as I was getting ready to graduate, I had failed to do that. I reached out about interning one of the trainings, and was able to do that. So while I was on the job market, I was also organizing one of the trainings in Philadelphia. And so as luck would have it, two of the people who were at the training were folks at VIU, where I had applied for a faculty position. And so it was a very, very small world situation with only about 20 people at that training. Two of them were Joanne and Beth. And so I got to basically spend a week of Inside Out sleepaway camp with two of my future colleagues, and it was super great. So I was really fortunate in the sense that Joanne had already done all of the legwork to get Inside Out set up and going. And I believe she and Beth had been teaching it already for a year or two, or maybe even 3 when I came in about 4 years ago. And so I was, really lucky in that it was, I think I was brought in partially because I was already trained for Inside Out. You guys can tell them why you hired me. I don't need to tell anybody why you hired me, but yeah, I was very fortunate. Joanne can speak more to how she got Inside Out going at our university and at the, within BC Corrections, but I do know that BC Corrections has been a really gracious host, and they have been, a real supporter of the program. And so we've been very fortunate to have that level of support. So Joanne, I don't know if you want to speak at all to, your experience getting things going. But that's my experience getting to know Inside Out, which the more students take it, the more people are going to be attracted to this sort of program, I think. So that's really, it's been a big part of my life for, I don't know, the past over decade now. So yeah, Joanne.
This is great. Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everybody. I think as I thought about today, I was thinking, what's one thing that I could add that maybe folks haven't thought about in terms of getting Inside Out going, if that's something that you're still looking to do. And I think the biggest tip that I really learned was when you're speaking with your university or with a correctional center, I found it very effective to speak the language of the institution back to them. So for example, when I was looking to start Inside Out, our mission statement or our academic plan was just coming out. And the key points in it were community engagement, access to education, experiential learning. That's Inside Out. And so if you can take the language in the direction your institution is going and speak it back to them, that this program ticks all your boxes, I found that really, really successful. And the same goes, with a correctional institution. If you use their language, it can really work to your benefit because you have, correctional practices and programming and things that are meaningful. And, it's really easy to argue for education for folks and pro-social, connection. And so that's kind of one of the tips that I would give to folks. Speak the language back to the people you're trying to convince. And if you can, learn as much about them as you can as well. I like to tell my students that I pretty much read the PhD thesis of one of the main people on the panel who would be deciding if I was going to be allowed inside. And so by the time we had the meeting, I was able to connect with her on a few, just a little insider experience. So it's so nice to see everyone. Thank you.
Anybody can feel free to jump in.
My story is extra international because I met Lori in Assisi, Italy, as I was presenting another project and we got hooked up at the same hotel. And so after breakfast one morning, I had just taught a course in prison as part of my doctoral research. And I said, this is amazing. This is exactly the way to connect academia and the outreach work that I'd like to do. And she said, so what would you think about starting Inside Out in Mexico? And that was in 2013. So the rest is history. But obviously, it's been a little bit more complicated because of the language barrier here in Mexico. But in case anyone has other Latino contacts who might be interested, we did a lot of work translating both the teacher's manual and the curriculum. So that is all set up for whoever wants to take advantage of it.
We also have translated the website. So that's important to know. And Danielle, could you just say a word about the particular population in the in the prison where you have done your classes and where we did that one training.
Right. So I work in a high security prison that Marietta and Tarmi also have visited. It's specifically for cartel members or people accused of high impact organized crime. So mostly homicide, kidnapping, and arms trafficking. And it's been really incredible. I went over there after having taught for a couple semesters at the women's prison with this great sense of sorority and hope and whatnot. And I have to admit that I went in more out of curiosity with a little thinking that it wasn't going to have the same impact that we had with the women. But it's been incredible. I mean, talk about the way that it affects them after having covered their emotions, because there's so much connection inside out between the head and the heart and the reflection and the opportunity for many of these men who have been trained to not feel in their line of work has led to some real amazing transformation stories that I'm now documenting as part of a participatory action research project with them.
Shall I jump in? That was really fascinating, Danielle. I've heard about your work from Laurie, but it's really brilliant to hear you speak about it. Fascinating. So I'm Kate, and just a few words about Inside Out in the UK. I kind of stumbled into Inside Out when I moved from one institution to the University of Durham in 2013. At that time, a colleague of mine, Fiona Measham, was already setting things up and making those very careful negotiations with 3 of the local prisons very close to Durham. In fact, one of the prisons is so close you can throw a stone and it can fall in the yard opposite our department. So it's very, very close. And yet many of our students at that time were not having any contact with the prisons. So there's 3 prisons we work with. We can say a bit more about those later on, but I was interested about Inside Out from speaking to Fiona Measham, who is a good friend and colleague of Susan Hyatt, who I know is here today from University of Indiana. So the connections are wonderful. So I was fortunate in taking the training at Greaterford back in the summer of 2014, and it had such an impact on me, and it really changed so much of my passion for teaching, because it had, although I'd changed to a new position, I kind of lost interest in my passion for teaching. And what Inside Out did for me was really it reignites what teaching should be about. And I know that if it wasn't for that training, if it wasn't for Fiona setting up Inside Out when I got to Durham back in 2013, that I wouldn't be in academia now. It just is the most powerful, impactful way to teach and to learn. And it is something that myself and colleagues I know that are here today, Hannah, we often say how much we love Inside Out. So it's really, you know, a big part of who I am, as other colleagues have said so far, and about what keeps me in my work. So we now deliver in 3 prisons in Durham, a women's prison since 2015, and Hannah's been very involved in setting up our Inside Out work at HMP Low Newton, and she might want to say a few words about the work we do there. But we also deliver Inside Out at a high security or a supermax prison called Frankland, which is located not far from our university, and that brings enormous opportunities and challenges for us. We can say a bit more about that later on. Hannah, did you want to add anything at this point about Inside Out at Durham, and perhaps about the work we do at the women's prison?
No, I was just going to say one thing that I'm sure others who deliver Inside Out who haven't been in prison this last year will really have missed doing it. It feels really odd saying to people we've missed not being in prison. Doesn't sound right unless you know what Inside Out is, but we've really missed it. But we have tried to facilitate something online, and one of the things that has been a real eye-opener for us is just how much we've been able to bring that kind of inside out ethos to an online space. We really didn't think that that would happen, and it has happened. We can't wait to get back in prison, but it really has happened, and partly due to Kath, who's here, and also Dalton and Phoenix, who are some of our inside alumni who have been supporting us online outside. So it's definitely made us realize that we can do some sort of inside out something even when we can't get into prison.
Thanks. We can talk more
Hello
later.
from Australia. Are you finished, Kate, or not?
We are for now. Thanks very much, Marietta.
Thanks, Kate. Hello from Australia. So my passion for Inside Out started back in 2005 when I attended a World Congress of Criminology, and I met Laurie and the lifers, and it was spending one day at the Greaterford prison, and I thought, this is my life. And from then on, everything since has been related to Inside Out. So I did the training the year after, so that was back in 2006. And then it took 8 years to get set up. So it was a very long, hard road to get everybody to believe in something that was to them very new and risky, but I wasn't going to give up. And of course, I had Laurie in my space the whole time saying, how's it going? Where are you up to? So that support's always been absolutely wonderful. And the last 5-6 years have been incredible. There's been a lot of growth. More than 400 students have now finished Inside Out, and it's just run by one university, so down under. So it's been just amazing. So something that I really, really love doing, like all of you guys. And we've been going into prisons because we've had low COVID cases over the past year. So that's been amazing. We have had now 2 weeks off because we've had a bit of an increase in cases, or a few new cases reported, but but we've been doing online as well, and face-to-face, mixed model, lots of sort of different things. Very happy to engage with people from around the world, share learnings. It was wonderful to spend time with you, Danielle. Thank you so much. Tarmi and I both absolutely loved it. So yeah, great to see everybody.
Marietta, can you say a few words about your think tanks?
Yes. So Inside Out is now run at 5 prisons, and we have 4 think tanks. So we have 3 prison-based think tanks and 1 released people's think tank, which meets online. And they all meet fortnightly, and all of the think tanks are directly contributing to policy making at state level and prison level. And that's been absolutely incredible over the last year. So the first 5 years of think tank operation, we had pretty much 0 impact, but we still persisted. And I think everybody was looking at, what is that strange group of people doing, coming into prison all the time. But then over the last 12 months, all of a sudden, we are contributing to policy making at the highest level in the state. And they want to hear from all 4 think tanks on everything because they're quite diverse. So one think tank is at a women's prison. Another think tank has predominantly younger male offenders. And the third think tank has an older cohort of male incarcerated people. And then there is a released people's think tank. So they're all quite different and have, I suppose, different things to add to each conversation. So it's been incredible.
Can you just say just a little bit more about what kind of policies you're talking about?
Yes. So at one of the prisons, actually at 2 prisons, in a different way, we have implemented policies that reward good, positive behavior. So as you all know, prisons work on, the fact that if you do the wrong thing, these are the consequences. So we've worked with 2 prisons on trying to really change the ideology the prison is managed. So there are incentives for good behavior. So people get points and then get rewards. And rewards are actually selected by the incarcerated people. So it could be something like having a visit in plain clothes, baking a cake for a son's birthday, things like that.
Thank you.
Yes. Is it okay if I jump in?
Please.
Thank you. In fact, I discovered the Inside Out program by a coincidence. In 2012, I participated the ASC conference in Chicago, and in the program there was some text about this teaching Inside Out model and about mixing people from the outside and the inside. And in Denmark, we have a halfway house where half of the residents are incarcerated people and the other half are people from the surrounding community, and they live together. And I have evaluated this halfway house, and all the residents experience personal growth. So when I saw this text, I was like so happy and thought this must be wonderful. And it was. After the conference, I went back to Denmark and started to work on getting permission to offer the program. And in 2015, I went to Philadelphia and got the training as an instructor, and it was so wonderful because I learned so much about teaching strategies, about ethics, all our practicing. I still use some of our practice in my Inside Out classes in Denmark. And in 2016, I did my first class in a maximum secure prison in Denmark. And I've been doing the class every spring semester since then, except for this year because of the COVID-19 situation. But now it's the COVID is under control in Denmark, so I will do it in the autumn. Marietta, she talked about this think tank model. And it's so, I think it's so amazing because every year when I have done my class, then the coming semester, I have some maybe 5-6 co-teachers among the former students among the incarcerated people. So now we are a team. Some of my inside students are lifers, so they will stay for many years. And now they are helping me, and we are co-teaching, and it's so wonderful. So it's a kind of a very small think tank, but I don't know if it is a think tank, but it's the Danish approach, I guess. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Okay, so I think our experiences are quite similar to that of Linda, because I also got to know Inside Out when attending the ASC. I think it was in San Francisco, I'm not sure, but it was in 2013 or 2012. And one of my colleagues and I attended the same panel, and we were like, wow, we don't have this in the Netherlands. Why don't we have this? Why don't our criminology students go inside prison? And why don't they connect with the inside students? So after that, we decided to discuss this with the people in our faculty. And like Marietta also said, or I'm not sure who it was, but it took quite some years before we were, formally approval to get started. And we took the training in 2017. And when I just saw the video in which Laurie told about the Inside Out program, I kind of got the same feeling as I did back then during the training. It was life-changing and we were so impressed when we got back home. And I can remember that we kind of felt it very difficult to explain this experience to our colleagues because it was so intense, and we couldn't really explain how intense. And we could explain what we did and where we went to and what we discussed, but it was more of a feeling. I was pregnant. I was highly pregnant back then, so I think 7 months or 7.5 months pregnant, and I think that made it even more intense walking through the prisons, and all the inside students were like, from the working group, were like, okay, you should get some exercise. Come, let's do a round through the prison. And it was really amazing. So, I mean, that made it all the more clear to us that we needed to set this up in the Netherlands. So our first Inside Out edition was in 2018. And ever since we have expanded. So another university in a country took the training as well to our colleagues in, I think, 2 years ago. And we now have about 4 prisons who are doing the program with us. So we are having 2 groups per university. So we are kind of increasing quite fast. And of course, because of COVID, it has been quite difficult to keep this going, and it was not approved to have a digital version. But the prisons are so enthusiastic about getting this started again next spring or summer. So really looking forward to it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful to have some kind of brief introductions to all of your different countries. Also want to acknowledge Fiona Measham from the University of Liverpool in the United Kingdom has also joined us. And also I wanted to recognize a friend of mine. I don't know if she's on, but Amina Shakir from Austria, one of our friends from the Institute, has joined us as well. And I noticed the proximity of the Netherlands and Denmark and Austria. So just to establish some connections there. But I wanted to transition to a new question. I'm curious, you know, of all your different countries, all of your different situations, every country, there are different attitudes about people who are in prison, about people who are incarcerated. And I suspect that perhaps there are various responses to this idea of the Inside Out class, you know, bringing traditional college students into a prison or jail and studying alongside incarcerated individuals. This is a pretty radical idea in the United States. It's becoming more common, but in new countries where you're the only person doing it, I suspect that it is received differently. So could any of you comment on, do people view your program with skepticism? Do they say, why are you offering education to people in prison? They don't deserve education in prison. Or perhaps you're from a more progressive country where they say, of course, people in prison deserve education and it's important to build boundaries. So could you just share a little bit about the culture of your country and how people around you have responded to this type of work that you do?
I may be the least progressive country in that respect, being that only 40% of youth in the state where I live reach high school. So when we say that we're offering college courses in a high security prison for those who are stereotypically accused of causing the majority of the I guess the most major problems that we have right now in Mexico, and at this point, not from any university, but the best university, the best private university in the western part of the country, there's a lot of skepticism of why in the world are these men receiving this level of education for free when there's so many people in the country who are not even being able to reach a high school level of education. But it gives us an amazing opportunity collectively, because a lot of the students have developed a great discourse in this respect to be able to look beyond that, as to this is not about individual interests, but rather the collective interest of our society. And this is going to benefit every single one of us. And it's not about this person should have before this person gets, kind of in the same way with the vaccines, you know, it's let's get critical thinking and concientización, as we call it down here, to as many people as possible, because that's how change is really going to happen.
However, Danielle, having said that, I just want to say that my experience down there, I don't know if you remember, I don't remember the gentleman who runs that facility, but he talked about how people who are incarcerated are referred to, not as prisoners, inmates, convicts, any of that. He said, and I don't know whether it's throughout Mexico, but he said, we refer to people who are incarcerated as people deprived of their freedom.
That's true. That's true. They're
pretty damn
PPLs.
impressive.
And you're right. There we might be beyond many other countries in that they're no longer referred to as inmates or prisoners here, but PPL, personas privadas de su libertad. Good memory, Lori.
And he said more than that. He said, and I was impressed because he said this in front of the men as well, that people who are deprived of their freedom should not also be deprived of their dignity.
Yes, he's a good one. He's been moved up. He's out of that system. He's above now. But yes, they should not be deprived of their liberty or their education. And it was thanks to him that things really got rolling in that prison.
Can I just ask a quick, that's fascinating to me. How universal is that attitude in other parts of Mexico in the prison systems?
That's a good question, and I probably couldn't speak to it. There is, so the term PPL, that's pretty much a national term now. I see that in national legislation, and the president uses it. So that's come a long way. But I think there's a lot of, as in any country, there's a lot of variation in the different prison systems on both a state and a federal level. So it depends on where you end up.
Any other thoughts on attitudes towards this inside out model of education in your countries?
I would say it's been quite well received. I mean, my experience being an inside out student in Philadelphia and just the way we were treated by the correctional staff there when like processing in and out of the facility compared to the treatment that I see and that I've experienced in the BC correctional system has been quite different from each other. And so I would say, BC Corrections has been quite supportive, and, I hear a lot less, I think, of that sort of attitude about, people who are incarcerated shouldn't, be educated or don't deserve an education. I feel like that ethos doesn't ring as true up here as it does in the States. I feel like I heard that a lot more down there. And I feel like generally people in this system, working within the system here at various levels have been, incredibly supportive of it happening. But, Canada kind of exists in this kind of middle ground between the US and, kind of looking towards other countries in Europe and saying, what can we kind of blend from both of these? And I think I see this movement kind of away from this US model they were kind of pulled back to about a decade ago. And so there is a lot of looking towards, other places for, for how to kind of innovate and progress and do better. But there's a lot of old policies still holding that back. So, we were actually very successful and thanks in part to, or in full to Joanne, getting BC Corrections to approve us going virtually on the hop. So Joanne was teaching and Beth were teaching at the Nanaimo Correctional Center, and they were allowed to go virtual mid-semester when we were all sent home from everywhere. And so BC Corrections has been super supportive of us going virtually, and we were already in 2 centers before that, but because of the way that has helped us to, be more adaptable, there's another new remote facility that we are now able to deliver Inside Out in as well. And so we've been very well received and have, it hurts to hear like, oh, it took 8 years to get this going, because I feel just so fortunate that I've been able to walk into such a supportive system. But there's still these pieces of policies that we're working against to kind of bring in line how the attitudes of the people working within the system versus the realities of working within it, and trying to get those policies more in line with where people's thinking are at. So there's still some challenges, but it's by and large a very supportive place to be doing Inside Out.
In the UK, just to reflect on a couple of thoughts, in the early days, my experience of doing Inside Out in some of the prisons was that it's very reliant on quite progressive governors that were open to allowing us to take students in. But it was a really radical thing to do in the early days of doing Inside Out in the UK. And what was interesting was, to begin with, in the first classes, we had, especially at the HMP Frankland, which is the high security prison, we had officers watching our every move in the classroom. We couldn't take anything in, we couldn't take water in, we could take, we were so scrutinized. And then gradually, as the years have gone on, they've stepped further and further away. We've been given more freedoms, taking cakes in. I mean, that's kind of been cut back a little bit of late before COVID. But it's prison staff that we have some resistance from, that cause a few problems for us. And it's in the 3 prisons too, of prison officers, correctional staff, really making it clear that they don't feel as though the people that we're engaging with in an Inside Out class deserve to be there. And we often see them ridiculing them, embarrassing them, and that's difficult to work with, because it's a very fragile relationship that we need to enable us to keep going into the prisons. So we have to be doing the right thing by those prisons, but also feeling very concerned and upset by the way that we see our inside students often being treated. So it's a mixed picture, I think, from our perspective in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Kate's point there, like she says it's really fundamental to relationship. The relationships are fundamental to what we're able to do, and Fiona can say more about from the outset, from setting it up in terms of how it was received as the first programme of any kind in the UK to take university students in and learn in this way. There is a long history of that in the UK. So even at Durham back in the 70s, academics were going in, but nothing like the Inside Out model. But certainly one thing that happened on the back of Fiona pushing and setting up Inside Out, but particularly with it being across the 3 different types of prison, it very much paved the way nationally for other Inside Out programs. So we've now got a number of Inside Out programs across England, and those instructors got trained and they were able to say, well, it's happening in they're doing it in a maximum security in Durham, they're doing it in a women's prison in Durham, they're giving credits at Durham, this is already being done. So it certainly helped pave the way for other people to set up, almost like once you've got one in there, somebody's doing it. So it is possible, and I think that's really helped in that sense. But yeah, we've got our own version of Trump in charge of the UK at the moment. So we definitely wouldn't describe it as a particularly progressive environment in any way whatsoever.
Picking up on that, I was just thinking, it's that standing on the shoulders of giants. So we were able to set it up in the UK because it was already set up and successfully operating in the US. And Susan Hyatt, who's on the call, was a research fellow in Durham. And so we were able to say, well, here is somebody who actually delivers the program. And Susan, you gave several seminars about Inside Out, didn't you? So it wasn't either some unknown scary prospect, but also it wasn't some crazy idea that had come from my head. It was something that's actually been happening for years, no problems, very successful, and here's somebody who's going to talk about it in detail and answer your questions. So I think that really helped for our university buy-in. And then, as Kate said, we had some quite progressive senior management at the prisons at the start, at least, who were very supportive and very keen. And I think they were sort of looking for some interesting flagship program, because in the UK, a lot of the prison education is basic literacy skills, and there's very little for sort of further education or higher education. So in a way, we came in at the right time, offering a program which was free for them. They didn't have to pay for it, and it was a higher education program, and there's so few of those. So I think in some ways it was, it was a sort of perfect storm, and having Susan on hand as well, that really made a difference as well, that she could answer everyone's questions.
I'm noticing that both Phoenix and Dalton are here, and I wonder if either of you would like to say anything. You took classes, I think, at I'm blanking on the
Low Newton Prison, yeah. HMP
Okay.
Low Newton, yeah. You there,
So,
Dalton?
either of you want to say anything?
I think for me, definitely, it was just groundbreaking. In the UK, they do really seem to stop you. From the minute I got into prison, I was really stressed. The second I got through reception and I went into the induction ceremony, they did a test on me, asking you basic maths questions and English to see what level you were at. And they told me I had special needs, and that I had to, basically I was at the bottom levels of everything. But I do believe that's because of the stress I was under. Sorry, what was that?
No, go on, Dalton, you can keep going.
Yeah, so when you are dressed with the education system, there's so many other factors hitting you. They take your medication off you when you come in. They wouldn't believe me when I said I was trans. So when you're stepping into education, there's so much hitting you that people can't always cope with it. But the second we were introduced to Inside Out, it was literally life-changing for me, and it completely changed my outlook. And if they could do that in other prisons in England, I would fully recommend it to anybody, because it gave me the confidence to want to do better, to actually feel that there was a level of dignity which was sorely missed within the education system that I was in the main jail. All they did was shout at you or tell you that you couldn't do it. And this was just that dignity that I needed. And I think that's how I've managed to further my education on leaving prison. And now I should be, I've just passed my final exam, and I'll be attending a criminology degree PA with Leeds University this year. And I fully believe that it's because of Inside Out that I've managed to gain that confidence, to be able to take that step into the void.
Would any other former Inside students of Inside Out care to share perspectives from your experience?
Hi, I got into Inside Out in 2019 when I was an inmate in Low Newton Prison. It's how I met Dalton as well. I found that the Inside Out program gave me back my voice. I felt that my opinions were listened to and that they actually mattered. And it made me feel that I was part of society again.
Well said. I don't recognize all the faces, so if there are other Inside students that would like to share something, please do.
Let me share with my experience.
Please.
Yes, I'm Mirhat Sirikbayev from Kazakhstan. I am a human rights activist, and 2019 I was one of the 18 scholars from around the world who came to Philadelphia, and we were hosted by Dialogue Institute. And during the program, we visited a state prison where we learning about Inside Out program. And we had dialogue with educators, and I feel their motivation. I can see how prisoners were interested in this program. They became more motivated, and I think in the future we should start beginning this program in my country also.
That would be great. There's a lot of folks here in this circle that would love to offer some support or guidance if we can. But that does kind of raise a question that might be helpful just to kind of think through together. You know, this idea of bringing college students into a prison to hold a class together for a semester. People, you know, hear about that idea and think, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'm going to do that in my part of the world, and I'll just, you know, make a few phone calls and I will do that. But I think that we all know that there are risks involved about doing that kind of thing unless you have really thought through it and taken the training. Would any of you care to share, you know, why you think taking detailed training is really important before you begin doing this type of work? What kind of risks and dangers are there if you don't know what you're doing before you start doing it? Anybody care to share?
I'll start again. So after I met Lori in Italy and I got a job as a professor, I proposed the program to the director of the university and started looking for contacts in the local political system who had contacts in the penitentiary system so I could pitch the proposal to them. And in Mexico, a lot of times they look up to the states, especially when it comes to education. So the idea of being the first prison system in Mexico to have this international US-based college program was very attractive to both my university and the prison system. So they said, great, can you start next week? Pretty much. And so I sent an email to Lori and I said, you know, hey, it's me from Italy. And guess what? I've got an all go here. And she said, well, you know, there's a training you should take. So we had a couple of Skype was a thing back then, a couple of Skype calls, and she gave me some tips on icebreakers and things like that. But I will confess that there was a lot of things that when I got into the training, I said, I really screwed up on that one. And I think the biggest was that I wasn't clear on the no relation outside of class. You know, we didn't use last names, but one of the students developed it. I was at the women's prison, and one of my students developed a friendship with someone on the inside and was signed up to start visiting on the weekends, which was very uncomfortable for me just because it fortunately didn't progress to anything else. But when I got into the training, I realized how risky allowing something like that really, really was. So yes, the training definitely well worth it. And the second time around, I also did it twice. I did the trainer too, and got just as much, if not more, out of it the second time around. So highly recommended.
Can I come in about the UK? And please do have a read of the comments, because both Hannah and Fiona have added something about their experience of the training, which is a really, really good points to make. I've also done the training as well. And like you, Danielle, I found both experiences really impactful. But I think for me, the training enables me or helps me feel what it's like to do Inside Out. And that kind of visceral, emotional experience of taking Inside Out by doing the training was really important, I think, to know how our students feel, the nerves that you can feel when you first go into the classroom, and what it feels like to do a group work. So I think that's really important too. It's very much underpinned by a critical pedagogy of experiential learning, but that for me was really important, to feel what it's like to be an inside student or an outside student by taking the training.
It's covert though, isn't it? It's covert to experiential learning, because Laurie doesn't tell us that at the beginning. We have to work it out for ourselves over the course of the week. That's what's happening.
Wait, what did you just say? It's what?
I said it's covert experiential learning. We don't
Covert?
even realize that's what's happening on day one. It takes us the week to realize.
And I think besides all the things that have been mentioned already, it's also, you can ask a lot of questions about the context in your country. For example, in the Netherlands, you guys are all talking about the semester. In our country, the majority of incarcerated individuals are imprisoned for, well, 3 months or less. So we really don't have a lot of time to spend with the inside and outside students. So we had to develop a program for about 10 or 11 weeks in order to avoid people falling out of the program. So I thought it was really helpful, besides all the things that have been mentioned, because I really relate to what Kate is saying about feeling an inside or outside student, but also more of the practical help. And Laurie was really helpful in thinking with us, okay, if you have to shorten the program, which elements should you definitely keep in, and which elements can you just put out? Or so that was really helpful to get started in a different context for me. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
So I did the training.
Yeah.
So I did the training very early on, or much earlier on, back in 2006, and then I did train the trainer, 12 years later, and I actually saw how the training changed from back in the time when I did it to what it was then in, yes, Laurie, it did change. And I just loved it on both occasions, and I would do it every year if I could. I always learn more, and that's what I love about it. And I actually think that, Laurie, what you should do is think about some refresher courses for people who've done it a while ago, because I think it is really, really good to do it, because we always learn from one another. And every time I go away from this space, I get different ideas. Anyway, so yeah, highly recommended.
So Marietta, it's really interesting you mentioned that, because that has come up, the idea of doing a refresher or a 2.0 or a whatever. And now that we're getting better and better at doing this on Zoom, we would probably do that on Zoom. And that would make it available to people, in a much easier way. So if anybody has any ideas around just even the topics to cover, be in touch. And I may actually reach out and ask people. We're just at the very first steps of starting to think about this.
Oh, I have lots of ideas.
I know you do.
You got time though, Marietta. All think tanks and everything. It's incredible how much you're involved in. It's great.
That's all I do, Kate. That's all I do.
I have a small comment on the thing that Elaine said about the very short sentences. In Denmark, we also have very short sentences. So this not having contact at all when the course has finished, it's very difficult. Also because all the students, they know their full name because they are enrolled at university. So you can see a list of forename and surname. So every time I do a course, I say to my students, you are not allowed to have contact outside the classroom during the course, but afterwards, I cannot control anything. Maybe some of them are released, maybe, yeah. So I have to make this adaptation. Yeah.
Couple of questions in the chat. One of the questions is by Emma. Are there opportunities or roles for former inside or outside students to participate? And I think, Lori, you gave the example of we have now former inside students that are now part of the team of coaches that participate in the training. Anybody else care to respond to how former inside or outside students continue to be involved?
I can see that Marietta's a little bit distracted at the moment, but Marietta is an amazing woman. I've worked with her for many years now. But Marietta actually gets many students doing internships, both inside and outside students, which, given that she runs so many think tanks and they are so active all the time, the interns do a lot of the admin work and research and things like that in that space. And those interns have then showed interest in becoming facilitators, which is excellent given how much it's progressing here. So sorry, Marietta, I just thought I'd jump in there because I think that that gives the students something even more, both inside and outside students, even more than the inside out program and then the think tanks as well.
I'm really intrigued by Sue Pierce's comment that's a little ways up in the chat line. She described Inside Out as a incredibly subversive and radical training done under an academic cover. So Sue's language reminds me of a question I'd like to kind of tease out a little bit. In each of your countries, there are unique kind of social, religious, cultural, political dynamics. And maybe in some of your countries, there are minority groups that may be more targeted for incarceration than others, you know, based on race, religion, whatever it might be. I'm just curious if some of you could speak to this model of dialogue and mutual learning. To what extent do you think this model of education is making a difference in the culture of your society? And I realize, like, even if you're only doing like two or three classes in your country, you're still making a difference, right? That the kind of ripple effect, you put a pebble in the water and it ripples. What kind of social change do you think, what seeds of social change are planted through teaching Inside Out courses in your country?
I'm teaching at the law school, and my students, they are becoming much better lawyers. No doubt about it. They say so. And when they have done the course, many of them, they ask me to write a letter, a recommendation, and they get job because of that recommendation, because they have been a part of the Inside Out program. And it's in the Ministry of Justice, it's prosecutors, it's I think it's yeah, it gives better lawyers, and also the inside students, they start to develop self-confidence, and a big part of them has continued education. So I think it gives personal growth for both.
Yep. I would say that I feel like we are able to, and we have been contributing to, a more compassionate society. I mean, we always try to, we always say we're making, we're trying to produce compassionate scholars and compassionate people going out into the work world. And I think this model of learning really facilitates that in a very deep and meaningful way. And I think that we're also really bringing to light a lot of the barriers that people are facing in terms of, not being kind of stuck in a cycle of reincarceration, and a lot of the systemic barriers that we can change. So it's really great to hear about Marietta's work with the think tanks and the level of policy impact that they're able to have, because that's something that we're really trying to get off the ground here. So it's very encouraging to hear what you're doing there. And so we know we have the ears of a lot of people, but really putting, making that have even bigger impact is something we're really looking towards.
I also think, for example, through little things like, well, it's not a little thing, but the closing ceremony, the final ceremony, we managed to the inside and outside students may invite family members and friends for the final ceremony. And I really noticed that especially the family members of the outside students were they've never been in prison as well. And they were like, oh, wow. Are these guys prisoners? And they look so normal. And so it turned out that they had a complete wrong image of people who are staying in prison. So I think not only the inside and outside students have this transformative experience, but also through their family members and their friends who come to witness it just for a couple of hours. But still the experience is very valuable for these family members as well. So I think the transformative effect also goes through these other individuals. Yeah.
Following up on that comment, the course that I give, it's I guess I'm kind of like Linda. I've Mexicanized the think tank. So it's the same group of inside students, and we publish each semester a literary journal. And then there's a different group of outside students that comes in each semester. And recently I've started attracting a lot of, the program is called Artes Audiovisuales. So they're like productionists and do videos and song production and stuff like that. And so they've been doing these projects with the narratives that are written by the participants on the inside. And there's been a really strong focus at recognizing how that counteracts the stigma, and not just the stigma of prison, but in this case, the stigma against organized crime and those who have been involved in organized crime and have been involved in the cartels and have histories as hitmen and kidnappers, and these terrible labels that are so hard to get past. And so it's really incredible when you have the opportunity to see how one of the stories that they write or the songs that they produce is so contrasting to this image that people don't even realize that they have in their mind towards someone who has committed a crime like the ones that are associated with this prison. So I think I hate to say humanizing, because I hate even the idea that they have been dehumanized, but it's a reality, and to be able to see how that happens, again, not just between the students on the inside and the outside, but everyone who has access to the journal and the other products. So I'll use that as an advertisement. I'll put the link to the website where all of the narrative videos and the songs can be accessed, and the PDFs of the journal can be downloaded if anyone wants to practice their Spanish.
Just one very quick observation to share. We've been doing Inside Out for a number of years now, into our 7th or 8th year, and I think now at Durham. And what's brilliant to see is kind of stumbling into somebody who has been an outside student working in various criminal justice projects that we have interactions with. So working inside the prisons, but working with women on release, or working in the education team, or working with the police it's just great to see, and they remember, and they talk about Inside Out just kind of sitting there, staying with them. And this drip that you talk about, Dave, is that as well. And it's really important, and it can shift and change pathways of our students. And we know this, but I think it's important to underline that here when we're talking about our outside students. And Kath and Dalton have had the opportunity to speak, but for them, I just to say, reflect on how much confidence I see in them, as they do quite a bit of teaching with us at Durham, teaching with us undergraduate students. As Hannah mentioned, they've helped us a great deal over our lockdown, HMP lockdown, we call it, over the past few months. But Phoenix in particular, I can remember Phoenix, who's here, she may not want to speak, but she was in our first Inside Out class as an inside student, and she was like a small, shy little mouse. And to see her grow and flourish and speak up and have her voice heard in various public contexts has been remarkable. And that's a small, it could be described as small impact, but for Phoenix, I would imagine it's huge. And I've seen that growth in you, and it's been really great to see, Phoenix. No pressure to speak, by the way.
What questions do we have for one another? Anybody else that hasn't had a chance to speak up yet?
I just quickly want to add my own experiences with the Inside Out course because I'm currently participating in that. And so I just really wanted to have an opportunity to say something here, because just listening to everyone's like stories of how they started this program, I just really want to thank you guys for all the struggles you've been through to put these programs into place, because I think what we're doing here is like something very unique. I'm a second year student at VIU in criminology, and what I find so helpful about this program is that it really it addresses topics that aren't really discussed within like the structural, how the university is set up. So this program allows for those discussions to kind of delve into concepts deeper that we don't really have an opportunity to address in school. So I can say single-handedly that this program has been the most helpful thing for me to really contextualize these issues that we learn about in the rigid structured school environment to my own life. And it's really made me have a passion for doing this. And I'm so grateful to have been able to participate in it. And just the experience of being able to leave judgments at the door and everyone comes together to address the issues in society, I think it's been tremendously helpful. And I really think that the program is producing a bunch of passionate people that really, through this personal experience of seeing each other for what we really are and going beyond the stigma to really see like what we essentially are beside our labels, it's really helped me address stigma with my family members and like other people that I know. And I really think that it's a really powerful program. So I really want to thank everyone for participating in it and making it so that I can be a part of it today.
Wow. Kimberly, thank you. It was beautiful.
We have a few more minutes yet. Any other folks who'd like to speak or share or ask a question?
I have a comment, Linda. I think David, you have to arrange such a thing soon again, and then we will have. It would be so wonderful to have the opportunity to invite some of our students from the different countries, so they could meet. In my syllabus, I have a photo of the Inside Out students from the US, and every year my students, inside students in my class, they feel they are a part of a bigger family, and they get so emotioned when they see all these people, and it's Inside Out students from other countries. So to have a meeting where we can meet crisscross, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, and on that point, Linda, I know one of the questions that, you know, we were thinking about today was, you know, maybe how can we increase opportunities for international collaboration? And, you know, Linda, not only, you know, bringing together, you know, outside students, but what, you know, I just, you know, I try to see the bright side in everything. And, you know, COVID has sucked and the virtual format's not as great as being in person, but it does give us a lot of opportunities. So it would be really cool if maybe in some of the places where we did have more progressive people in charge that were open-minded, maybe we could even do some within class collaborations and do kind of, you know, class projects internationally to really, you know, kind of highlight the similarities and differences in the systems internationally. So it would be cool if maybe we could have a conversation around the, you know, possibility of doing that as well. I don't know how possible that even is, but it'd be cool if we could do in-class projects with each other. So.
Wow. Be amazing.
That would be, and makes me think of a couple things. I had just sent something to Dave about, you know, do we want to think about this group kind of forming a group of some kind to help us to think through further internationalizing the program, because you all have amazing experience and insights. So that's something to think about. And the other thing is that, let's see, what are we in June, July, August, September, October? In 16 months, we're going to have our 25th anniversary. And we also want to, and we'll do a bit of it, maybe a large bit of it, virtually. Because that way we can bring in lots and lots and lots of people from all over the world. So that's also something for us to be thinking about. So I think I will probably follow up with folks and we can think about any reactions to either of those thoughts before we run out of time. Yeah. All right. I knew it. Y'all are so game. Wow.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to join this conversation. Many of you who are long-term veterans of this great work, some folks that have been participating as students, and then other folks that are just kind of checking it out for the first time. So it's just wonderful to have a mix of folks here. So please feel if you wish to reach out more. And I'm particularly grateful for my Dialogue Institute friends, Mirhat and Amina, for joining us and being a part of this community today. So I think without further ado, Lori, unless you have some other words of wisdom to conclude with.
Not a word of wisdom, but we will send out, this was recorded, right?
Yes.
We'll send out this recording to everybody.
Yep.
And that way, if there are folks who, you know, couldn't make it, who you know, you might want to send it to them. Thank you all so much. This was a kick. It was great. Just great.
Thank you all. Be well.
Bye.
Great to see you. Take care.
Bye.
Wow.